Mom, you're going to rot here, you wretch. Those were the last words my daughter Cristina said to me before abandoning me in a nursing home on my 67th birthday. Hello, my name is Isabel, and if you want to hear more stories like this, subscribe to the channel and take the opportunity to tell me where you're listening to this story from. It was a sunny Tuesday in March 2024, and I had woken up with my heart full of anticipation. After all, it's not every day that someone turns 67, right? I had made a simple lemon cake, my favorite, and set the dining room table with the embroidered tablecloth my mother left me. I placed the flowers I cut from the garden in an antique vase and waited. I waited for my only daughter, Cristina, to arrive, so we could celebrate together. What I didn't imagine was that she would actually come, but not to wish me well. When the doorbell rang at 2 p.m., I ran to the door with a smile on my face. I opened the door expecting a hug, maybe some flowers, or even a simple "Happy birthday, Mom." But what I found was Cristina, accompanied by her husband, Javier, both with serious expressions and a black folder under their arms. My daughter was different. Cold, with a look I had never seen before in all those 42 years since I brought her into the world. "Mom, we need to talk," Cristina said without even entering. "You're not going to live in this house anymore." The words left her mouth like knives. There was no hello, no happy birthday, nothing. Just that cold and calculated declaration. Javier remained behind her, staring at the floor, unable to meet my gaze. I felt like the world stopped. "What do you say, daughter?" I managed to utter, although my voice came out shaky. "What are you talking about?" Cristina entered the house, gently pushing me to the side, as if I were an obstacle in her path. She opened the black folder on the dining room table, exactly where I had placed my mother's embroidered tablecloth and the flowers from the garden. "We've made a decision," she continued in a mechanical voice. "You're getting old, forgetful. The other day you left the oven on. Last week you fell in the bathroom. You can't continue living alone." My mind was working at top speed trying to recall those incidents she mentioned. The oven on never happened. The fall in the bathroom never happened. They were lies. Lies concocted to justify something I still didn't fully understand, but that was beginning to take shape in my head. "Cristina, I didn't leave any oven on or fall in any bathroom. What's really going on here?" I asked, feeling anguish rising in my throat. "Mom, don't argue," she interrupted with an impatient gesture. "It's already decided. We'll admit you to the San Jose residence. It's a nice, clean place with nurses on staff 24 hours a day. You'll be better cared for there." I looked at the papers I had spread out on my table. Admission forms, medical authorizations, legal documents. Everything was already prepared. Everything had already been decided without anyone consulting me. It was my birthday, and my own daughter had come to tear me from my home. "But daughter, this is my house," I protested, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "This is where I lived with your father. This is where we raised you. This is where all my memories are. You can't just kick me out like this." Cristina sighed as if she were dealing with a wayward child. "Mom, this house is too big for you alone. The garden needs maintenance, the stairs are dangerous, the expenses are high. It's best if we sell it, and with that money we can pay for the nursing home and other things." There, the truth finally coming out. This wasn't about my well-being or my safety. It was about my home, this property in the center of Valencia, worth approximately 480,000 euros in today's market. This house, which my late husband, Antonio, and I bought 40 years ago, when it was worth almost nothing, but which over the years and with the development of the neighborhood had become a small fortune. Cristina wasn't worried about me. She was worried about keeping my assets. "I'm not selling my house, Cristina," I said with as much firmness as I could muster. "And I'm not going to any nursing home. This is my house, and I have every right to live here." My daughter's expression changed instantly. The mask of filial concern disappeared. and in its place appeared something dark, something that frightened me deeply. "You're in no position to decide, Mom," she said in an icy voice. "The van will arrive in an hour to take you. Everything has been arranged." 1 hour. They were giving me 1 hour to say goodbye to my life, my home, everything I knew. I looked around my living room, at the photographs on the walls that documented an entire life, the furniture Antonio and I had chosen together, the sofa where I had breastfed Cristina as a baby. All of it was about to be taken from me. "You can't do this," I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew it was useless. Cristina had already made her decision. During that hour that followed, I tried to reason with her, to talk some sense into her, to remind her of all the years I had worked to give her a good life. I reminded her how I stayed up until the early hours of the morning, sewing dresses for the neighbors after Antonio died 20 years ago. How I saved every euro so she could study at university. How I sold my own jewelry when I needed money for her wedding to Javier. But none of it mattered. Now her eyes saw only the house and the money it represented. When the white van arrived with the San Jose nursing home logo on the side, I knew I had no more options. I didn't have the strength to fight physically, and the tears no longer allowed me to even speak properly. I packed a small suitcase with the essentials, some clothes, photographs, a few personal documents. My hands trembled as I folded each item, as I packed every memory into that limited space. An entire life reduced to a suitcase. At the door, just before they loaded me into the van, Cristina approached and whispered in my ear those words I'll never forget. "Mom, you're going to rot here, you wretch." She said it so quietly that Javier and the driver couldn't hear it. But I could. Every syllable was seared into my soul like a hot iron. My own daughter, the child I had carried in my womb for 9 months, who had nursed at my breast, who had comforted me for countless nights, was wishing me dead in the cruelest way possible. But at that moment, instead of completely collapsing, something strange happened. I felt a smile form on my lips, a small but real smile, because I knew something Cristina didn't, something that would change the entire game board in exactly 3 days. My younger sister, my beloved Dolores, had passed away the previous month in Barcelona after a long illness. Dolores never married, never had children, but she did live an extraordinary life as a successful businesswoman in the real estate sector. 3 weeks ago, I had received a call from Miguel, the lawyer handling Dolores's affairs. "Señora Isabel," he had said to me in a solemn voice, "your sister named you as the sole heir to her entire estate. We need to meet to formalize the documents." At first, I didn't grasp the magnitude of what that meant. Dolores had always lived simply, in a modest apartment, driving an antique car. She never flaunted money or material possessions, but when Miguel showed me the documents, I nearly fainted in his office. My sister had amassed an impressive fortune, 16 million euros between commercial properties, stock market investments, savings accounts, and government bonds. 16 million euros, an amount I couldn't even fully comprehend. Dolores had invested wisely for 40 years, buying properties at opportune moments and selling them when the market was high. She had been a brilliant businesswoman who kept a low profile all her life. "The final documents will be ready for signature in a week," Miguel had explained to me. "Once you sign, the money will be transferred to your accounts in approximately 3 business days." I did quick calculations in my head. The meeting with Miguel was scheduled for the following Thursday, 3 days after my birthday. That meant that exactly 3 days after Cristina abandoned me at the nursing home, I would become a woman with 16 million euros. I decided not to tell anyone about the inheritance, neither Cristina nor my 2 grandchildren, Lucas and Alba. I wanted to see how my family behaved without the influence of money. I wanted to know if Cristina loved me for who I was or just saw me as a source of support. And now, sitting in that van, on the way to the nursing home, while my daughter and her husband stayed at my house, probably already planning how to empty it and sell it. I had my answer. A painful but clear one. The ride to the San Jose residence lasted approximately 30 minutes. I gazed out the window, watching my neighborhood, my familiar streets. My entire life slip further and further away. The driver, an older man with gray hair, tried to make conversation, but I couldn't respond. The words stuck in my throat along with the lump of pain and betrayal I felt. When we arrived, the building was exactly as Cristina had described it. Clean, modern, with well-kept grounds. But no amount of architectural beauty could make up for the fact that I was there against my will. A young nurse named Marta greeted me at the reception desk with a professional smile. I was shown to my room, a small but tidy space with a single bed, a closet, a chair, and a window overlooking the garden. "You'll be comfortable here, Mrs. Isabel," Marta said with genuine kindness. "If you need anything, just ring the bell." I nodded wordlessly, looking at that space that would now be my world. 4 white walls replacing an entire house filled with memories and life. That first night in the nursing home was the longest of my life. I lay in that strange bed, between sheets that smelled of hospital disinfectant, and wept silently. I wept for the daughter I had lost, for the betrayal I had suffered, for the 67 years I had lived to reach this moment of total abandonment. But amid the tears, there was also another emotion growing in my chest: determination. Cristina thought she had defeated me, that she had left me vulnerable and without options. But in 3 days, everything would change. And as I closed my eyes that night, my heart broken but my mind growing clearer, I knew the story was just beginning. The first rays of dawn were entering through the window of my room at the San Jose residence when I woke up that Wednesday. I had slept only a few hours. My mind was constantly spinning, recalling every detail of what had happened the day before. I stared at the white ceiling, so different from the ceiling of my bedroom at home, where there was an antique lamp that Antonio installed decades ago. Every little detail reminded me that I was no longer in my home, that my own blood had ripped me from there. I got up slowly and walked to the shared bathroom at the end of the hall. Other residents were already awake, some walking with the aid of canes, others sitting in wheelchairs. They all had that same look of resignation, as if they had accepted that this would be their final fate. But I wasn't like them. I had a secret that burned in my chest like a flame of hope and justice. In 2 more days, my life would change completely. After breakfast, which consisted of watery coffee and dry toast, I returned to my room and took my cell phone out of my suitcase. Thank God Cristina didn't think to take it away. She probably assumed a 67-year-old woman wouldn't know how to use it for anything important. How wrong she was. I searched my contacts for the number of Miguel, my sister Dolores's lawyer. I needed to confirm that everything was going according to plan, that in 2 days I would have access to those 16 million euros that would change everything. "Señora Isabel, good morning," Miguel replied in his professional and cordial voice. I was going to call her today. We have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow, Thursday, at 10 a.m. in my office to sign the final inheritance documents. I explained my situation, that I was now in a nursing home against my will, that my daughter had taken advantage of my supposed vulnerability to lock me up there. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Señora Isabel, this is very serious," Miguel finally said. "But legally, you are not incapacitated. You can leave that place whenever you wish. Tomorrow, I will send a car to pick you up for the meeting, and after signing the documents, we will have to take legal action to protect your interests." I asked him to maintain absolute discretion about the inheritance. I didn't want Cristina to find out yet. I wanted to see how far he was willing to go. I wanted to document every step of his betrayal before revealing my new financial reality. After I hung up with Miguel, I sat on my bed thinking about all the years I had dedicated to raising Cristina. I remembered when she was a little girl, with blonde curls and bright eyes, when she would hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. I remembered the nights when she was sick, and I would stay up by her side, putting cool cloths on her forehead when she had a fever, comforting her when she had nightmares. I remembered her college graduation, how I cried with pride watching her receive her diploma. But I also remembered other things I once ignored or justified. I remembered how at 16 she yelled at me that she hated our modest house, that all her friends lived in better places. I remembered how at 20 she demanded I buy her a new car, threatening to never visit again if I didn't. I remembered how at her wedding to Javier 15 years ago, she barely thanked me for paying for half of the celebration, selling the last of my mother's jewelry I had left to do so. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. Or maybe I did see them, but I excused them, thinking it was my fault, that I hadn't given her enough, that as a mother I should sacrifice more. Now, sitting in that nursing home room, I realized I had raised a selfish and manipulative daughter. And the worst part was that part of the responsibility lay with me for never setting clear boundaries, for never saying no to her, for always prioritizing her desires over my own dignity. Around noon, one of the nurses knocked on my door. "Ms. Isabel, you have a call at the front desk. It's your daughter." My heart immediately raced. I went downstairs to the front desk where they handed me the landline. "Mom, it's me," Cristina said in a neutral voice, without a trace of guilt or regret. "I was just calling to let you know that we've already started moving some things out of the house. We need space to store our belongings while the sale is finalized." My blood boiled. Barely a day had passed since she abandoned me here, and she was already emptying my home. "Cristina, those things are mine," I managed to say, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "You have no right to touch anything." She sighed impatiently. "Mom, don't start all the drama. It's just old furniture. Besides, we need to sell the house quickly. Javier found an interested buyer who can pay cash. In a couple of weeks, everything will be resolved." A couple of weeks. She was giving me a couple of weeks before I completely got rid of my life, my past, everything Antonio and I built together. "We'll see what happens in a couple of weeks," I said with a calmness that surprised even myself. Cristina must have noticed something odd in my tone because there was a brief pause before I answered. "What do you mean by that?" she asked suspiciously. "Nothing, honey. Just that life takes many turns." And I hung up before she could reply. That afternoon, while the other residents watched television in the common room, I sat in the garden with a notebook I had found in my room. I began making a list of everything I needed to do once I had access to Dolores's inheritance. First, immediately revoke the power of attorney I had granted Cristina 5 years ago, when I thought it would be helpful to have someone who could handle banking matters if I fell ill. That power of attorney gave her access to my accounts and documents. I had to cancel it immediately. Second, block all credit cards linked to my main account. Cristina had an additional card that I paid for, which she used freely for her expenses. If I was really going to learn a lesson, I needed to experience what it meant to stand on my own 2 feet financially. Third, contact a trusted real estate agent to list my house myself before Cristina could make any legal moves. Although the property was in my name, I didn't underestimate her ability to create problems. Fourth, and most importantly, I needed to draft a new will. The current one, made 10 years ago, left everything to Cristina as my sole heir. But after what she'd done, after abandoning me on my own birthday with those cruel words, she no longer deserved a single euro of my estate. I would calmly decide who to leave those 16 million euros plus the value of my house to. Perhaps to charities that truly helped elderly people in vulnerable situations. Perhaps to create a foundation in Dolores's name. As I wrote in that notebook, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. For decades, I had felt small, dependent, always trying to please Cristina to maintain her affection. But now, with this unexpected inheritance, the tables had turned completely. I was in control. I had the resources. I had the ability to decide my own future without depending on anyone. It was a feeling both intoxicating and terrifying. That night, as I ate dinner in the nursing home dining room with other residents, I observed their tired faces and sluggish movements. Many of them had probably also been abandoned by their families, left here for others to take over their care, while the sons and daughters lived out their lives without the burden of aging parents. I wondered how many of them had daughters like Cristina. How many were betrayed by the same blood they once cared for and protected with absolute devotion. An older woman sitting next to me, named Rosa, asked me how long I'd been there. "It's my second day," I answered truthfully. She nodded understandingly. "The first few days are the hardest, but you get used to it. I've been here 3 years." 3 years. I couldn't imagine being locked in this place for 3 years. Rosa must have read my expression because she added, "My son comes to visit me every month. He's a good boy. He just lives very far away and has a lot of work." But I'd heard that story before. Sons who live very far away, who have a lot of work, who promise to visit soon, but never do. Excuses that mothers and fathers accept because it's easier to believe a white lie than to face the painful truth of abandonment. I didn't judge Rosa for clinging to that narrative. It was probably the only thing keeping her sane in this place. But I wasn't going to be like her. I wasn't going to stay here accepting crumbs of affection from a daughter who had discarded me. Later, back in my room, I received a text from my grandson, Lucas. "Grandma, Mom told me you're in a nursing home because you fell and need care. Are you okay?" My heart sank. Cristina had lied to her own children about what she'd done. Lucas was 15, old enough to understand the truth. But his sister Alba was only 12. I didn't want to involve the children in this yet. I responded simply, "I'm fine, honey. Don't worry about Grandma." The truth was, I missed my grandchildren terribly. Lucas, with his passion for soccer and his endless questions about what life was like when I was young. Alba, with her love of reading and her spontaneous hugs. They were innocent in all of this. It wasn't their fault they had a manipulative mother. I promised myself that when this was all over, when I had resolved the situation with Cristina, I would find a way to maintain a relationship with Lucas and Alba. They deserved to have their grandmother in their lives. That night, before going to sleep, I took out of my suitcase an old photograph that I always carried with me. It was of my sister Dolores and me when we were young, probably about 20 years ago. We were on the beach in Barcelona, smiling at the camera with the sea behind us. Dolores had that twinkle in her eyes that always characterized her, that spark of intelligence and determination. "Thank you, sis," I whispered, looking at the photo. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity to regain my dignity." Dolores was always the stronger of the two of us. While I married young and dedicated my life to my family, she pursued her entrepreneurial dreams with admirable ferocity. She never apologized for putting her career first. She never allowed anyone to make her feel less than for not following the traditional path of marriage and children. And now, even after her death, she continued to watch over me. She continued to give me the tools to fight for myself. It was her last gift, and I wouldn't waste it. Thursday dawned with a gray sky and the threat of rain. I dressed carefully, putting on the best dress I had packed in my suitcase and the pearl necklace Antonio had given me for our 20th anniversary. If I was going to sign documents that would make me a multi-millionaire, at least I would do it with dignity. At 9:30 in the morning, just as he had promised, a black car sent by Miguel arrived at the entrance to the San Jose residence. The driver, a young and polite man, opened the back door for me. "Good morning, Mrs. Isabel. Don Miguel sent me to pick you up." I climbed into the vehicle, feeling strangely important during the 40-minute drive to the center of Valencia, where the lawyer's office was located. I gazed out the window, observing the city that had been my home for decades. Soon I would have the economic power to do whatever I wanted, go wherever I wanted. Freedom was just a signature away. Miguel's office was on the third floor of an elegant building in the city center. His secretary greeted me kindly and offered me coffee while I waited. A few minutes later, Miguel emerged from his office with a professional smile and invited me in. Over the next 2 hours, we reviewed every document related to Dolores's inheritance. Commercial properties in Barcelona, Valencia, and Madrid, bank accounts in 3 different institutions, stock market investments, and government bonds, all totaling exactly €16,300,000. Once you sign these documents, Miss Isabel, the transfer process will begin immediately, Miguel explained. In approximately 3 business days, everything will be in your name and available. 3 business days. That meant that by the following Monday, I would officially be a wealthy woman. I signed each document with a trembling hand, aware that each signature irrevocably changed my future. When we finished, Miguel pulled another folder from his desk. Now let's talk about the legal steps we need to take to protect you. I explained the situation in detail. The power of attorney granted to Cristina, the additional credit cards, the threat of selling my house. Miguel took meticulous notes, his expression becoming increasingly serious. The first thing we'll do today is revoke that power of attorney, he said firmly. Then we'll contact your bank to block all the cards linked to your account, except your personal one. And regarding the house, how is it in your name? No one can sell it without your consent, but I do recommend we change the locks immediately. Before leaving his office, I asked Miguel one more thing. I need to draft a new will, one that completely excludes my daughter. Miguel looked at me with understanding and some sadness. He had probably seen similar cases many times in his career. Of course, Ms. Isabel. I'll prepare a draft for your review. Do you have in mind who you want your assets for? I thought about it for a moment. I want to create a foundation to help elderly people abandoned by their families. The rest can go to local charities. When I returned to the San Jose nursing home that afternoon, I felt like a completely different person than the one I had left that morning. I had a clear plan, endless resources to execute it, and most importantly, I had regained my agency. I was no longer the helpless victim Cristina imagined rotting in a nursing home. I was a woman with €16 million and a fierce determination to see justice done. That night, while the other residents slept, I lay awake staring at the moon through my bedroom window. In 2 more days, when all the money was in my accounts, the next phase of my plan would begin, and Cristina would discover that underestimating her mother had been the most costly mistake of her life. Friday dawned with brilliant sunshine that contrasted sharply with the storm it was about to unleash on Cristina's life. I woke up early, more rested than I had been in days. There was something comforting about knowing I was in absolute control of the situation, that every piece of the puzzle was falling into place exactly as I had planned. Today would be the day I would begin executing my strategy with surgical precision. After breakfast, I called Miguel from my room phone. "Good morning, Ms. Isabel. I have excellent news. The transfer of funds was completed early this morning. The €16,300,000 is now available in your main account." I felt my heart skip a beat. It was real. Everything was completely real. It was no longer a future promise. It was my tangible present. Furthermore, Miguel continued, I've already processed the revocation of your daughter's attorneyship. From this moment on, she has no legal access to any of your documents or accounts. I asked him to immediately proceed with the next step, contact my bank to block all cards linked to my account, except my personal one. Miguel assured me he would personally take care of it within the next hour. We also discussed the strategy for selling my house. I know an excellent and discreet real estate agent. He told me, we can have the property on the market by this afternoon if you're willing. Given the prime location, it shouldn't take long to find serious buyers. I gave him my full authorization. I wanted everything to move quickly before Cristina could react or attempt any legal maneuvers. Miguel explained that he would need to send a locksmith to change all the locks in the house that same morning to prevent my daughter from continuing to freely enter and steal my belongings. I'll have the locksmith accompanied by a notary to document any resistance or incidents. he added with the efficiency I so appreciated. Everything was in motion. Around 11 a.m., as I sat in the garden of the residence reading a book I'd found in the small library, my cell phone started ringing. It was Cristina. I smiled slightly before answering. "Mom, what the hell is going on?" His voice sounded altered, almost hysterical. "I just tried to use my card at the supermarket and it was declined. I called the bank and they told me the account was blocked." I kept my voice perfectly calm and neutral. "Oh yeah. I decided to make some adjustments to my finances. You know, people who live in nursing homes don't need credit cards, right? That's what you said yourself, that I wasn't capable of managing my own affairs." There was a tense silence on the other end of the line. I could imagine her processing my words, trying to understand what was happening. "Mom, this isn't funny. I have pending purchases, bills to pay. You can't just block my card." "That's right. Your card," I repeated emphatically. "Cristina, that was never your card. It was an extension of my account that I paid for out of generosity. But since you've decided I'm an inept old woman who should rot in a nursing home, I thought you wouldn't need my financial support anymore. Surely a grown, independent woman like you can manage her own expenses?" I heard her breathe deeply, trying to control her anger. "Mom, don't be dramatic. This is ridiculous. I need that card." "What you need, Cristina, is to learn to live within your own means," I replied with a firmness that surprised me. "I worked since your father died to support us both. I sewed dresses until my fingers ached. I took any sewing job that came along. I never expected anyone to support me. It's time you did the same." Before he could answer, I added, "Oh, and one more thing. I've also revoked the power of attorney I granted you. You no longer have access to my documents or authorization to act on my behalf." The scream that came from his throat was almost animal. "How dare you? Who do you think you are to do this?" The question was so absurd that it almost made me laugh. I am Isabel Martinez, a 67-year-old woman who still has full mental and legal capacity to make her own decisions. I am the owner of my life, my property, and my money. And I will no longer allow anyone, not even my own daughter, to treat me as if I were a disposable nuisance. And I hung up before she could continue screaming. My hands were shaking slightly, not from fear but from pure adrenaline. I had spent decades avoiding confrontations with Cristina, always giving in, always trying to keep the peace, but something had changed inside me. Perhaps it was the cruel abandonment on my birthday. Perhaps it was discovering the extent of her selfishness. Or perhaps it was simply that I now had the resources to stand up for myself. Whatever the reason, I was no longer the submissive, accommodating mother she knew. Barely 20 minutes later, Cristina called again. This time her voice had a different tone, more controlled, but with a menacing edge. "Mom, I just spoke with Javier. We tried to get into your house to continue organizing things for the sale, and the locks have been changed. There's a paper on the door signed by a notary that says the property is under legal protection, and that any unauthorized entry will be considered trespassing." What does all this mean? "It means exactly what it says," I replied calmly. "It's my house. I bought it with your father 40 years ago. It's in my name, and no one is going to sell it except me, when I decide." Cristina let out a dry, humorless laugh. "Mom, you're making a huge mistake. Do you need that sold house to pay for the nursing home? Or do you think that place is free? We were trying to help you organize your finances." The lie was so blatant that it provoked genuine indignation. "Cristina, stop pretending this has anything to do with my well-being. I know perfectly well that you and Javier were planning to keep the money from the sale. I know you racked up debts counting on that inheritance, but I have news for you. That inheritance is never going to come." There was a long silence. "What do you mean?" he finally asked in a tense voice. "I mean, my plans have changed. You'll see." And I hung up again. That afternoon, Miguel called me with updates. The real estate agent had already visited my house and taken professional photographs. The property would be listed on the market by first thing Monday morning. Given the value and location, I expect serious offers in less than a week, he explained. He also informed me that he had begun drafting my New Testament as per my instructions. I am including the creation of the Dolores Foundation to help seniors in situations of family abandonment. Are you sure you want to allocate 50% of your estate to this? Absolutely sure, I answered without hesitation. My sister dedicated her life to building that fortune by working smart. I want her legacy to be to help people who are going through the same thing I was, that no one else has to feel abandoned and discarded by their own family. Miguel was silent for a moment. That is a very noble gesture, Señora Isabel. Your sister would be proud. His words touched me deeply. Dolores would truly be proud to see her money used for something so meaningful. Saturday passed relatively calmly. Cristina tried to call me 3 more times, but I ignored them all. There was nothing left to discuss with her. The decisions had been made, and the legal mechanisms were in motion. Instead, I received a text message from my grandson Lucas asking if he could visit me on Sunday with Alba. My heart warmed. The children weren't to blame for any of this. I replied that of course I'd love to see them. That evening, while I was having dinner in the nursing home's dining room, Rosa, the older woman who had spoken to me days before, sat next to me again. You look different, Isabel. Stronger. More confident. I was surprised she noticed. I guess I'm learning to stand up for myself, I replied honestly. She nodded sagely. That's good. Too many of us spend our lives pleasing others and forgetting about ourselves. I did for 50 years of marriage. When my husband died, I realized I didn't even know who I was without him. His words resonated deeply with me. I too had spent decades defining myself by my roles. Wife to Antonio, mother to Cristina, grandmother to Lucas and Alba. But who was Isabel Martinez beyond those labels? At 67, I was discovering sides of myself I didn't even know existed. An inner strength that had lain dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. And that moment was now. On Sunday morning, I dressed with special care for my grandchildren's visit. I put on a blue dress they'd always loved and tied my hair in an elegant bun. Lucas and Alba arrived around 11, accompanied by Javier, who waited in the parking lot, not daring to enter. The children hugged me tightly, and I felt tears threatening to fall. I had missed them so much in these few days that felt like weeks. "Grandma, why are you here?" Alba asked with her 12-year-old innocence. "Mom says you fell and need a nurse, but you look fine." Lucas, more perceptive at 15, looked at me with questioning eyes. I decided to be honest with them, within reason for their age. Their mother thought it would be better for me to be here, but the truth is, I'm perfectly capable of taking care of myself. This is only temporary. Soon I'll be living in a nice new place. I told them about my plans to move to a smaller but cozy house with a garden where they could visit me. I didn't mention anything about money or the conflict with their mother. That wasn't their burden to bear. We spent 2 wonderful hours together, walking through the residence's gardens, Lucas telling me about his last soccer game, and Alba about the book she was reading. When it was time to say goodbye, Alba whispered in my ear, "I miss you, Grandma. Our house feels strange without you." After they left, I returned to my room, my heart torn between the joy of seeing them and the sadness of the situation. Cristina was lying to them, above all, creating a false narrative where she was the worried daughter and I was the sick mother needing institutional care. But the children weren't stupid. They would eventually see the truth. I just hoped that when that happened, it wouldn't damage them too emotionally. That afternoon, I received a call from Miguel that changed everything. "Ms. Isabel, I have extraordinary news. A family saw the photographs of your house this morning and wants to make an immediate offer. They're willing to pay 480,000 euros cash, no financing, with closing in less than 2 weeks. My breath hitched. Is this a legitimate offer? I asked incredulously. Absolutely. I've already verified their financial standing. They're a young couple with 2 children who have been looking for exactly that type of property in that area for months. I didn't hesitate for a second. I accept the offer. Proceed with the sale immediately. Miguel laughed softly. I'm pleased with your decision. I'll prepare all the documents for signing. The family wants to move in as soon as possible, so if you agree, we could close the deal by next Friday. Friday. In less than a week, my house would be sold, the money in my account, and Cristina would definitively lose what she considered her guaranteed inheritance. On Monday morning, just as I anticipated, Cristina showed up at the residence in a rage. The receptionist called me saying my daughter was in the lobby, demanding to see me. I walked down the stairs calmly, without rushing. When Cristina saw me, her eyes were blazing with rage. What the hell do you think you're doing, Mom? I heard you put the house up for sale. When were you planning to tell me? I don't have to tell you anything, Cristina. It's my house. I can sell it whenever I want and to whomever I want, I replied, looking her straight in the eye. She took a step toward me, her voice rising. That house is our family history. I grew up there. That's where Dad lived. You can't just sell it to strangers. The hypocrisy was astonishing. Cristina, that house stopped being family history the moment you decided I should rot in a nursing home. It stopped being that when you started emptying it without my permission to take my things. Javier, who had entered behind her, tried to intervene in a conciliatory voice. Isabel, let's be reasonable. If you need money to pay for this place, we can help you organize it without selling the house. Maybe a loan. I interrupted with a raised hand. I don't need your help, Javier. Not yours or Cristina's. In fact, I'm perfectly fine financially. Better than you guys could possibly imagine. The confusion on their faces was almost comical. What are you talking about? Cristina asked, suspiciously. I decided it was time to drop the first bombshell. I'm talking about your sister Dolores leaving me a sizable inheritance when she passed away last month. An inheritance you guys were completely unaware of. I saw the color drain from Cristina's face. How much? She asked, her voice barely audible. I shrugged with feigned indifference. Enough so that I'll never have to worry about money again for the rest of my life. The transformation on Cristina's face was instantaneous and predictable. Fury turned into something close to panic. Mom, I didn't know. If you had told me, she began to babble, what would you have done differently, Cristina? Wouldn't you have abandoned me in a nursing home on my birthday? Wouldn't you have told me to rot here? Tell me, if you had known about the money, would you have acted differently? The silence that followed spoke volumes more than any verbal response. I thought so, I said with genuine sadness. You only wanted me for what you could get from me. The house, the future inheritance, anything of material value. But I, as a person, as your mother, meant nothing to you. Cristina tried to take my hand, but I moved away. Mom, please, can we work this out? It was a mistake. I was stressed. Javier and I have financial problems. I stopped her again. Your financial problems are not my responsibility. You are adults. Find a way to solve them yourselves. I turned to walk back to my room, leaving them standing in the hallway. Behind me, I heard Cristina begin to cry, but my feet kept walking. For too many years, I had given in to her tears, to her emotional manipulations. No more. This time, Isabel Martinez was going to defend her dignity no matter the cost. The days following my confrontation with Cristina were a strange mix of inner peace and frenetic activity. While she tried to process the revelation of my unexpected inheritance, I worked methodically with Miguel to finalize all the legal details that would ensure my complete independence. On Tuesday morning, I signed the sales documents for my house before a notary. The purchasing family, Andres and Patricia Moreno, with their 2 young children, seemed genuinely excited to acquire the property. Patricia, A young woman in her 30s with sparkling eyes thanked me profusely.
Mrs. Isabel, this house is exactly what we've been looking for. We will raise our children here with much love.
Her words comforted me in an unexpected way. At least my home would end up in the hands of people who would cherish it, who would create new happy memories within those walls that had seen so many important moments in my life. I sincerely wish them all the happiness in the world. The 480,000 euros was transferred to my account that same day, along with the 16,300,000 euros from Dolores's inheritance. I now had a total of 16,780,000 euros, a figure so astronomical that I still struggled to fully grasp it. But it wasn't the money itself that gave me satisfaction, but the freedom it represented. The ability to make decisions without depending on anyone, to live with dignity on my own terms. Cristina, of course, didn't stay still after learning about my financial situation. The phone calls became incessant. She left 17 messages on my voicemail over the next 3 days. At first, they were angry messages, accusing me of being selfish and vindictive. Then they turned into desperate pleas, explaining that she and Javier owed 200,000 euro to various creditors. Eventually, they morphed into attempts at emotional manipulation, reminding me that I was her only child and that the grandchildren needed me. But what truly confirmed that I had made the right decisions was a message I received on Wednesday from an unknown number. It was from a private investigator, hired by Cristina to determine the exact size of my inheritance. The investigator, surprisingly, contacted me directly to inform me of what my daughter had asked him to investigate.
Ms. Martinez, I thought you should know that your daughter hired me to investigate your banking activities. Out of professional ethics, I want you to be aware of this. I thanked her and hung up, feeling a mixture of sadness and confirmation. Cristina had gone so far as to hire investigators to spy on me, to quantify exactly how much money I had and thus calculate how much she could get from me. It was definitive proof that her intentions had never been genuine. She didn't care about my well-being or our relationship. She only cared about money. That night, as I gazed at the moon from my dorm window, I made a final decision. There would be no turning back. On Thursday afternoon, Cristina showed up at the San Jose residence again, but this time with a completely different strategy. She arrived with a bouquet of expensive roses and a box of chocolates imported from Switzerland. Her face wore an expression of studied regret, too perfect to be genuine. She found me in the garden reading under the shade of a tree. "Mom, can we talk?" she asked, in a soft, almost childlike voice. I gestured to the bench next to me without saying anything. Cristina sat down, leaving the gifts between us like peace offerings. "Mom, I've done a lot of thinking these past few days. You're right. About everything. I behaved horribly toward you. I was selfish, cruel, and ungrateful. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway." The words sounded beautiful, well rehearsed, but her eyes betrayed her. They were still calculating, measuring, looking for the right angle to manipulate me. "Cristina, would you be here if I were really a poor old woman with no home and no money?" I asked directly, my voice calm but firm. She blinked, taken aback by the direct question. "Of course you do. You're my mother," she began, but I held up a hand, stopping her. "Don't lie to me anymore. Don't lie to yourself. We both know the answer. If I didn't have a single euro, I'd still be rotting in this nursing home without you caring in the slightest." I saw her mask begin to crack. Frustration was beginning to seep through the facade of regret. "Mom, Javier and I are in serious trouble. We owe 200,000 euros. The banks are threatening to foreclose on our debts. We lost your house. The cards are blocked. We have nowhere to get the money. We just need a temporary loan. We'll pay you back in full." There it was, the real reason for their visit. I didn't come to apologize. I came to ask for money. "How did you accumulate 200,000 euros in debt?" I asked, genuinely curious. Cristina lowered her gaze, embarrassed. "Personal loans, credit cards.
A mortgage loan we took out using your house as collateral 2 years ago when you gave me the power of attorney. My blood ran cold. They used my house as collateral without consulting me. Her head nodded slightly. We figured we'd eventually inherit it anyway, so it didn't matter. The logic was so twisted it left me speechless for a moment. They had mortgaged my assets, my home, counting on my early death so they could inherit it and pay off their debts. They had planned my life and death as if they were pieces on their personal financial chessboard. Cristina, listen to me very carefully, I said with icy calm. I'm not going to give you a single euro. Not now, not ever. You and Javier are responsible adults. If you ran up irresponsible debts, you'll have to find a way to pay them off yourselves. Her face transformed instantly. The fake regret disappeared, replaced by pure rage. You have 16 million euros and you're not going to help your own daughter. What kind of mother are you? She screamed, forgetting we were in a public garden where other residents were strolling. I am the kind of mother who worked until her hands hurt to give you an education and opportunities. I am the kind of mother who sacrificed everything for you for 42 years. And I am the kind of mother who is no longer going to allow you to manipulate and use her. Cristina stood up abruptly, the roses falling to the floor. This won't stay this way.
I have lawyers. I'm going to fight for what's rightfully mine. I'm your sole heir. I looked up at her from my seat, feeling strangely calm in the face of her threat. You were my sole heir. Past. Last week I signed a new will. 50% of my estate will go to the Dolores Foundation I created to help elderly people abandoned by their families. The rest will be divided among charities. All you'll have left will be a letter explaining why I made these decisions. The color drained from her face. You can't do this to me. Her voice was barely a muffled whisper. I can, and I did. Miguel, my lawyer, made sure everything is perfectly legal and irrevocable. Even if you try to fight in court, which is your right, it will take years and you'll spend more on lawyers than you could ever win. Well-drafted wills are very difficult to challenge in Spain. I stood up too, looking her straight in the eyes. 45 years, Cristina. For 45 years, I tolerated your selfishness, your demands, your lack of consideration. Always justifying yourself, always forgiving you. But there are limits. Cristina began to cry. Real tears this time, mixed with genuine despair. Mom, please. They're going to seize everything. Javier lost his job 6 months ago. We're living off savings that have already run out. We don't know what to do. For a moment, just a fleeting moment, I felt my resolve waver. She was my daughter, after all. I had carried her in my womb, watched her take her first steps. But then I remembered her words on my birthday. Rot there, you wretch. I remembered the calculated cruelty with which she abandoned me. You'll have to look for jobs, Cristina, both of you. Work like normal people do when they have debt. Cut expenses, live modestly, pay little by little. It's what I did when your father died and we were left without income. It's what millions of people do every day. It's not the end of the world. It just requires effort and humility. She shook her head, unable to accept that there would be no bailout. Don't you understand? It's too much money. We can't pay it on normal wages. Then you'll have to negotiate with creditors. Seek legal advice to restructure the debt, perhaps declare bankruptcy if necessary. There are options, Cristina. Only none of them include my money. I picked up my book from the bench, ready to return to my room. Mom, wait, she called desperately. There's something else you should know. I'm 3 months pregnant. You're going to be a grandmother again. She touched her belly in a protective gesture that seemed rehearsed. I stopped, feeling something tighten in my chest. A baby, another grandson or granddaughter. But even as I processed the news, a part of me wondered about the convenient timing of this pregnancy. How long have you known? I asked slowly. For 2 weeks, she replied quickly. We wanted to tell you sooner, but all of this happened 2 weeks ago. I found out after she was admitted to the nursing home. I found out, and still I didn't change my behavior or my cruel words. Cristina, if you really are pregnant, I'm happy for you, and I hope the baby is born healthy. But that doesn't change anything between us. A baby isn't a tool of manipulation or a ticket to money. That child will need responsible parents who work to support them, not parents who live waiting for other people's inheritances. I saw her open her mouth to protest, but I continued. When that baby is born, if you and I have managed to rebuild a genuine relationship based on mutual respect and not money, we can talk about how I can be present in her life as a grandmother. But first you need to show me that you've really changed. I walked away, leaving the stop in the garden amidst the fallen roses and her tears. Every step weighed on me, but I knew that to give in now would invalidate everything I had built these past few days. It would mean returning to the same destructive pattern as always, where Cristina did what she wanted and I simply accepted and forgave without consequences. No more. This time there were clear lines that wouldn't be crossed. That night, as I packed my suitcase to finally leave the San Jose residence the next day, I reflected on everything that had happened. In just 10 days, my life had taken a 180-degree turn. I had gone from being an abandoned woman in a nursing home to becoming the master of my destiny with unlimited resources. I had gone from being a victim to the architect of my own justice. And most importantly, I had recovered something I thought was lost forever. My dignity. Miguel had found a perfect house for me in a gated community with 24-hour security, 3 spacious bedrooms, a bright living room, a modern kitchen, and a small but charming garden full of flowers. He had also hired Marta, a 50-year-old nurse with experience in caring for the elderly, to live with me as a companion and assistant. Not because I actually needed medical care, but because the company would be pleasant and it would give me peace of mind to have someone trained nearby in any situation. Eventuality. On Friday morning, while the car Miguel had sent was waiting for me at the entrance of the residence, I said goodbye to Rosa and some other residents with whom I had shared these strange days. "Take care, Isabel," Rosa said, hugging me tightly. "You are a brave woman. You inspired me to talk to my son about some things we needed to clarify." Her words filled me with warmth. If my experience had helped at least one more person stand up for their own dignity, then something good had come out of all of this. As the car drove away from the San Jose residence, I took one last look at the building through the back window. I had spent only 10 days there, but it felt like months. 10 days that changed the entire course of my life. 10 days in which I learned that it's never too late to stand up for what's right, to set boundaries, to demand the respect you deserve. Cristina had thought she was punishing me by leaving me there, but unknowingly, she had given me the necessary push to finally free myself from the emotional chains I'd been dragging around for decades. Now I walked to my new house with my new life waiting for me. I felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement. I didn't know what the future would hold. I didn't know if Cristina would really change or if this breakup would be permanent. I didn't know how Lucas and Alba would react when they were old enough to understand the whole truth. But what I did know, with absolute certainty, was that Isabel Martinez would never again be the submissive, compliant woman who allowed herself to be walked all over. It was time to finally live for myself. My new home in the Las Azaleas condominium was everything Miguel had promised and more. As the car drove through the security gates and along the tree-lined streets of the residential complex, I felt like I was truly beginning a whole new chapter. The house, located on a quiet corner, had a white facade with blue shutters and a front garden blooming with yellow roses and jasmine. It was modest compared to my old house, but it had something that one never had after Antonio's death. It was completely mine, without painful memories attached to every wall. Marta was waiting for me at the entrance with a genuine and warm smile. She was a robust woman with brown hair tied back in a braid and kind eyes that inspired immediate trust. "Señora Isabel, welcome to your home,"
I have prepared everything according to Señor Miguel's instructions. I hope you feel comfortable here.
We walked through each room together. The master bedroom had large windows overlooking the garden. The second was already set up as a library with shelves waiting to be filled, and the third would be for Marta. The kitchen smelled of freshly baked bread. I thought you might like something homemade for your first meal here, Marta explained, pointing to the table where a golden loaf was steaming next to a vegetable stew. The gesture touched me deeply. After days of eating the nursing home's institutional food, that homey aroma brought tears to my eyes. We had dinner together that evening, talking about our lives. Marta had been a widow for 8 years, with children, and completely dedicated to her nursing profession. I like taking care of people, she told me simply. It makes me feel useful. The first few weeks in my new residence passed with a tranquility I hadn't experienced in years. We established simple but comforting routines. Breakfasts in the garden when the weather permitted, walks around the neighborhood every afternoon, afternoons dedicated to reading and organizing the Dolores Foundation with Miguel. I didn't receive a single call from Cristina during that time. It was as if she had disappeared from my life completely. And although part of me suffered for my daughter's absence, another part was grateful for the peace that distance brought. Lucas, however, began writing me letters, beautiful and honest letters, in which he told me about his days, his worries, his dreams of becoming an architect one day. In one of them, written 3 weeks after I moved in, he confessed, "Grandma, I know something happened between you and Mom. She doesn't want to talk about it, but I hear her crying at night. Dad is working 2 jobs now, and we hardly ever see him. Alba asks about you constantly. I miss you a lot, too." Those words broke my heart. I decided to answer each of his letters with the same honesty he offered me, albeit tailored to what a 15-year-old could process. I explained that sometimes adults have serious disagreements, which need time and space to resolve. I assured him that my love for him and Alba hadn't changed one bit, that none of what was happening was their fault. I promised him that when the time was right, we could meet and talk calmly about everything. At the end of October, 2 months after moving into my new house, I received an unexpected call. It wasn't from Cristina, but from Javier. His voice sounded tired, even defeated. "Isabel, I know I have no right to ask you for anything after all. I just wanted to let you know that Cristina gave birth last night. A baby girl. They're both doing well." I felt my heart stop. My granddaughter had been born. A new life had come into the world, and I didn't even know the birth was imminent. "What's her name?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. "We called her Isabel," Javier replied after a meaningful pause. "Cristina insisted on that name. She says she wants the child to have her grandmother's strength." Tears began to roll down my cheeks uncontrollably. Naming the baby after me was a huge gesture, a message I couldn't ignore. "Can I visit them?" I asked, knowing I was risking my heart again. "Cristina says she'd like to see you," Javier admitted. "But you also understand and decide not to." I asked for the hospital address and promised to go the next day. That night I could barely sleep. My mind whirled between the excitement of meeting my new granddaughter and the fear of facing Cristina again. Was this another manipulation? She was using the baby as a tool to get closer to my money. But then I thought about that innocent little creature who bore my name, and I knew I couldn't let my issues with her mother keep me from meeting her. Chapter 4. Chapter 12. This time to create Attack 2020. Subscribe to Baby with my new grand. Babies deserve unconditional love no matter the circumstances of the adults around them. The next morning, Marta accompanied me to La Fe Hospital. She carried a bouquet of white daisies, Cristina's favorite flowers as a child, although I wasn't sure she still remembered them. At the door of room 211, I paused, taking a deep breath before knocking.
Come in. I heard Cristina's voice from inside. I walked in slowly, and the first thing I saw was my daughter in the hospital bed, her hair disheveled and dark circles under her eyes, holding a small bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. "Hello, Mom," Cristina said softly. There was no trace of the fury or desperation from our last encounters, only tiredness, and something that felt like genuine vulnerability. I approached the bed slowly, as if any sudden movement might shatter this fragile moment. "Hello, daughter. Congratulations." I looked down at the bundle in her arms, and my heart melted completely.
There, sleeping peacefully, was the most beautiful baby I had ever seen. She had wisps of dark hair and rosy cheeks.
"Do you want to hold her?"
Cristina offered. I nodded wordlessly and, with infinite care, took little Isabel in my arms. She was so light, so perfect, so completely helpless. I looked at her sleeping face and felt something move inside me. That inexplicable connection that only a grandmother can understand.
"She's beautiful,"
I whispered, unable to tear my gaze away from her.
"She looks just like you when you were born. Same lips, same tiny nose."
We were silent for several minutes. Only the soft sound of the baby's breathing filled the room. Finally, Cristina spoke, her voice hoarse from unshed tears.
"Mom, these 2 months have been the hardest of my life. Javier works 14 hours a day at 2 different jobs. I got a job as a receptionist at a dental clinic. I worked until the day before I gave birth. We sold the car. We moved into a tiny apartment.
Creditors call us constantly. It's exhausting, humiliating, terrifying. I listened without interrupting, gently rocking the baby in my arms. But you know what the worst part is? Cristina continued. The worst part is realizing you were right, that I had lived my whole life waiting for others to solve my problems. First you and Dad, then just you after he died. I never really grew up because there was always a safety net. I always knew if I failed, Mom would be there to fix things. Tears streamed freely down her face. Now, when I put you in that nursing home, when I said those awful words to you, I did so because in my head, I'd already reduced you to an obstacle between me and what I thought I deserved. I didn't see you as a person, like my mother, who sacrificed everything for me. I saw you as a financial asset I could liquidate. And that, her voice broke, that is unforgivable. I know. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in months. She had lost weight. There were new wrinkles around her eyes. Her hands showed signs of manual labor. She was no longer the spoiled, demanding Cristina who had abandoned me on my birthday. Genuine suffering, forced responsibility, and motherhood had begun to transform her into someone different. But it was still too early to know whether that change would be permanent or only temporary while the difficulties lasted. "Cristina, I appreciate your words," I finally said, carefully returning the baby to her arms. "And I think these months of hardship have taught you valuable lessons. But forgiveness isn't something that happens overnight. Broken trust takes time to rebuild, if it can be rebuilt at all." She nodded, accepting my words without protest. "I know. I didn't come to ask you for money or help, Mom. I just wanted you to meet your granddaughter, to know that she bears your name because I want you to grow up strong like you." I asked her about their plans to handle the debts. Cristina explained that they had negotiated a 5-year repayment plan with the creditors. It would be difficult, but possible, if they both kept their jobs and lived extremely frugally. Javier had found a job as a manager at a warehouse, and she would be returning to the dental office after 6 weeks of maternity leave. "My mother-in-law will watch the baby while we work," she added. "We can't afford daycare yet." Before leaving, I took an envelope I had prepared that morning out of my purse. "This is for little Isabel," I said, placing it on the table next to the bed.
Don't open it until I leave. Cristina looked at me with questioning eyes, but nodded. I said goodbye by kissing my granddaughter's soft forehead, and, surprisingly, I also kissed Cristina's forehead.
Take care of yourselves. And Cristina, I'm glad you're finally learning what it means to be responsible. Keep it up. In the car ride back, Marta noticed my thoughtful expression. How are you feeling, Mrs. Isabel? She asked gently, confused. I admitted it honestly. I want to believe she's changed. But I'm afraid of falling back into the same patterns, of going back to being the mother who forgives everything without consequences. Marta nodded understandingly. Real change takes time, months, even years. But it's also true that motherhood can transform people in unexpected ways. That baby could be exactly what your daughter needed to finally grow up. The envelope I left contained 10,000 euros and a note. The note read, "For little Isabel from her grandmother. This money is for the baby's medical emergencies only, not to pay off debts or adult expenses. If I find out it was used for anything else, it will be the last help you'll ever receive from me." If you use it correctly, it will show you've truly changed. The decision is yours. It was a test. I knew it. But I needed to see if Cristina would respect the clear boundaries or try to manipulate them again. For the next few weeks, I didn't receive any calls from Cristina asking for more money or thanking me for the envelope. The silence was deafening, but also revealing. Either they were respecting my boundaries, or they were too proud to contact me. Either option was better than the desperate and manipulative pleas of before. In the meantime, I continued to focus on the Dolores Foundation. Miguel and I had worked tirelessly to establish the foundation's bylaws and goals. It would offer free legal advice to seniors whose relatives tried to take advantage of them. It would provide financial support for verified cases of abandonment and create education programs on elder rights. The official opening was scheduled for December, 2 months earlier than originally planned, because the demand for cases was overwhelming. Isabel, there are 127 requests for assistance awaiting processing. Miguel informed me during one of our meetings. Cases of children who stole their parents' pensions, families who abandoned elderly people in nursing homes without ever visiting them, situations of financial and emotional abuse. It's heartbreaking. Each case reminded me that my experience wasn't unique. Thousands of older people in Spain faced similar or worse situations. The foundation could really make a difference. One November afternoon, I was in the garden pruning roses when I heard the doorbell ring. Marta opened the door and moments later appeared with a surprised expression. "Señora Isabel, you have visitors. They are your grandchildren, Lucas and Alba." My heart raced. The children were standing timidly at the entrance without their parents. "Grandma," Lucas said with a trembling voice. "Can we talk to you?" I hugged them tightly, feeling how much I had missed them these past few months. I led them to the garden, and Marta brought lemonade and cookies. "How did you get here?" I asked worriedly. "We took 2 buses," Lucas explained with teenage pride. "Mom doesn't know we came, but we needed to see you." Alba, at 12, took my hand. "Grandma, is it true that Mom did bad things to you?" We heard Mom and Dad arguing. Mom was crying, saying that she had hurt you and that you would never forgive her. I chose my words carefully. Your mother and I had serious disagreements. She made mistakes that hurt me a lot, but she's also working hard to change and improve. Family relationships are complicated, children. They're not always black and white. Lucas looked at me with his youthful yet surprisingly mature eyes. "Are you ever going to forgive her?" The million-dollar question. Literally. "I don't know yet, Lucas," I answered honestly. Forgiveness isn't automatic. Your mother needs to show with actions, not just words, that she's truly changed. And I need to heal from the wounds she caused me. Both take time. Alba rested her head on my shoulder. "We miss you so much, Grandma. The house feels empty without you. And the baby is very cute, but she cries all the time." I told them about my new life, about the foundation, about my future plans. Before they left, I gave them some money for the taxi back because I didn't want them to ride the bus alone. "You can visit me whenever you want," I assured them. "You will always be welcome here. You are not to blame for anything that happened between your mother and me. I love you unconditionally." I hugged you for a long time before watching you leave in the taxi. Your visits filled me with hope. No matter what happened with Cristina, my relationship with my grandchildren could be saved. That night, surprisingly, I received a text message from Cristina. "Mom, Lucas, and Alba told me they came to visit you. Thank you for having them. Thank you for not speaking badly of me to them. And thank you for the money you left for the baby. It's still intact. We'll use it only if she needs it medically, just as you requested." It was a simple but meaningful message. It showed that, at least in this regard, I was respecting the boundaries I set. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. December arrived, bringing with it an unusual cold spell for Valencia and also the official inauguration of the Dolores Foundation. The event was held in an elegant hall in the city center, attended by local authorities, representatives of charities, and the media. I was nervous. I'd never been one to seek public attention, but Miguel insisted that my story could inspire other older people to defend themselves against abusive situations. During my inaugural address, I recounted my experience without mentioning specific names. I spoke about being abandoned on my birthday, about feeling discarded by my own family, but also about how my sister's unexpected inheritance gave me the tools to reclaim my dignity. This foundation exists so that no older person has to feel alone and helpless in the face of family abuse, I said firmly, so that everyone knows they have rights, that they have value beyond their assets, and that it's never too late to demand respect. The response was overwhelming. Several seniors in attendance approached afterward with tears in their eyes, sharing their own stories of abandonment and abuse. An 80-year-old woman named Amparo hugged me, saying, "Thank you for giving us a voice. For years I thought it was my fault, that I had failed as a mother because my son treated me like a burden." I reassured her that it wasn't her fault, that adult children are responsible for their own actions and decisions. What I didn't expect was to see Cristina in the audience. She was standing at the back of the room, holding little Isabel wrapped in a knitted blanket. Our eyes met for a long, meaningful moment. She didn't come closer. She didn't try to speak to me during the event. She was simply there, watching, listening to every word I spoke. When the ceremony was over and I began chatting with the attendees, I looked over to where she'd been, but she was already gone. That night, back home, I found a letter slipped under my door. It was from Cristina. I opened it with trembling hands and began to read. "Mom, today I listened to your speech and finally understood the extent of the damage I caused you. I didn't just abandon you physically in a nursing home. I abandoned you emotionally long before that. For years I saw you as a resource provider, not as a person with feelings and needs of your own. The baby in my arms is teaching me what it means to love unconditionally. And that makes me realize how much you loved me like that throughout your life without me even valuing it." The letter continued. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness, because I know I don't deserve it yet. I just want you to know that Javier and I are still working hard. We've already paid off 30,000 euros of our debt in these past 4 months. The other 10,000 euros you left for the baby is still untouched. Little Isabel is healthy and strong. She hasn't needed any medical emergencies. But your gesture of conditional trust taught me something important, that trust is earned through consistent actions, not empty promises. I hope one day I can earn yours again." I read and reread that letter for hours. There was something different in the tone, a genuine humility I hadn't detected in our previous encounters. 30,000 euros paid in 4 months meant real sacrifice, with 2 jobs and a newborn baby. That required iron discipline and crystal-clear priorities. Maybe, just maybe, Cristina really was changing. But my wounded heart still needed more time and more tests before it could fully open again. Christmas was fast approaching.
Lucas and Alba visited me every 2 weeks now, always with their parents' permission. They told me about their lives, their studies, their friends. Alba confided in me that she wanted to be a writer one day, and I gave her a laptop so she could start writing her stories. Lucas showed me his architectural drawings, impressive sketches of imaginary buildings, and I promised her that when it was time for college, the Dolores Foundation would offer scholarships for talented young people. A week before Christmas, Cristina called for the first time in months. Her voice sounded different, more mature. "Mom, I know you probably have plans for Christmas Eve, but I wanted to invite you to dinner with us. It will be simple, just pasta and salad because we can't afford more. But we would love to have you. The children ask about you constantly, and little Isabel is already smiling. I would like you to see that." The invitation took me completely by surprise. I spent several days deliberating whether to accept or not. I consulted with Marta, who wisely told me, "Señora Isabel, life is short. Justified grudges can protect us, but they can also isolate us. Your daughter is extending an olive branch. It's up to you whether you accept, but at least consider that the children deserve to see their family together at Christmas." She was right. Lucas, Alba, and little Isabel were not to blame for anything. They deserved to have their grandmother present on such a special occasion. On Christmas Eve, I arrived at Cristina's modest apartment, bearing gifts for everyone. The contrast with the spacious house where they had lived before was striking. It was a tiny space, with second-hand furniture and thin walls, but it was clean and decorated with handmade Christmas ornaments. Javier greeted me with a shy, grateful hug. He looked tired, but there was a peace on his face I couldn't remember seeing before. Dinner was exactly as Cristina had described: pasta with homemade tomato sauce and a simple salad. But the food didn't matter. What mattered was sitting around that small table with my grandchildren, watching Alba animatedly tell stories, Lucas talk about his upcoming soccer tournament, and little Isabel asleep in her Moses basket next to us. For a moment, just a moment, I felt that perhaps the family could eventually heal. After dinner, while the children played in the other room, Cristina and I were left alone in the kitchen washing dishes. We worked in silence for several minutes until she spoke. "Mom, these months have been the hardest, but also the most important of my life. Working 12 hours, coming home exhausted to take care of a baby, counting every euro before spending it. It made me finally understand what you went through for years after Dad died, and I'm deeply ashamed of not having appreciated it sooner." I didn't respond immediately. I just continued drying a plate. Finally, I said, "Repentance is important, Cristina, but what really matters is what you do with it. If this suffering transforms you into a better person, a better mother, then it will have been worth it. But if as soon as your financial situation improves, you return to the same patterns as before, then nothing will have really changed." She nodded, accepting the harshness of my words. "I know. And I promise you, I won't be that person again." Before I left that night, I handed Cristina an envelope. "This isn't money," I clarified, seeing her alarmed expression. "It's a letter of recommendation I prepared. One of the companies associated with the Dolores Foundation is looking for an administrator. The salary is better than what you're earning now at the clinic. If you're interested, introduce yourself with this letter, but understand that it's not a favor. You'll have to prove your competence like any other candidate." Her eyes filled with tears as I took the envelope.
"Thank you, Mom. Not only for this, but for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it." I looked at her with a mixture of cautious hope and maternal love that could never be completely extinguished. We all deserve second chances, Cristina, but not thirds or fourths. This is your chance to show who you really want to be. Don't waste it.
The following months brought gradual but steady changes. Cristina got the job as administrator, and her financial situation improved markedly. With the better salary, they were able to accelerate the repayment of their debts. She continued to visit me occasionally, always respectful of my limits, never asking for more than I was willing to give. Little Isabel was growing quickly and beautifully, and I visited her every 2 weeks to get to know her better. The Dolores Foundation was thriving beyond my wildest expectations. In 6 months, we had helped 183 older people in situations of family abuse or abandonment. Some cases ended in genuine reconciliations, others in necessary separations. The important thing was that each person received the legal and emotional support they needed to make informed decisions about their own lives. One spring afternoon, almost a year after my birthday in the nursing home, I was in my garden watching the azaleas bloom when Cristina appeared with little Isabel. The baby was now 8 months old and beginning to babble. "Mom, I have something to tell you. Javier and I finished paying off all our debts, the full 200,000 euros. We are finally financially free." The pride in her voice was genuine. I hugged her, feeling genuine happiness at her accomplishment. "I am so proud of you, daughter. You showed a strength I didn't know you had." She hugged me back tightly. "I had it because I inherited it from you. It took me 67 years of your life and almost losing your love for me to realize it. But I finally see it." We sat together in the garden, little Isabel crawling between us. And for the first time in over a year, I felt that maybe, just maybe, we had found our way back to each other. Not everything was perfectly resolved. Complete trust would take years to rebuild. But as I watched my daughter play with her baby in my yard, as I listened to her genuine laughter and saw the peace in her eyes, I knew I'd made the right choices. Setting boundaries, demanding respect, not giving in to manipulation. All of that not only saved me, but also gave Cristina the chance to finally become the woman she was destined to be. At 68, I'd learned the most important lessons of my life. That it's never too late to stand up for your dignity. That true love includes healthy boundaries. And that sometimes, the greatest show of love is allowing the people we love to face the consequences of their actions, so they can grow. The story that began with abandonment and betrayal was finding its path to redemption, not through easy forgiveness, but through hard work, mutual respect, and a determination from both of us to be better than we'd been.